It is sometimes scary when you hear people talk about you, and you're made to realize that perhaps you may have done one or two things right throughout the span of your time. However, this is not about me today. We are here to talk about cybersecurity. And I'll be sharing a number of slides that will be talking through user awareness. Allow me to emphasize that the discussion today is non-technical. The topics that we are discussing, the subject lines that we are discussing, are items that you will experience and go through on a day in, day out basis. But because technology is so entwined in the way we live our life today, it's unbelievably important that you understand what you're dealing with and have some sense of being able to keep yourself safe. In essence, to have some level of street knowledge as you step your way through it. And so that's what I'll be discussing. I imagine towards the end, we may have a chance to have a bit of a Q&A. However, as we go through it, for any key issues, perhaps you can type it into the chat, and I'll try and, as best as I can, to occasionally just look at it and see how I can be able to respond to it. Mr. Kanda, I just want to make sure that I'm able to upload my presentation.
Yeah, sure. Please try.
You should be able to share the screen. That should be fine.
Okay. Let's see if this will work.
We're also able to hear you loud and clear. So
there we go. Are you able to see my screen yet?
Not yet.
not yet.
Okay. And how about now?
Not yet.
Not yet. Perhaps you could share your entire screen.
Let's see. Sorry, guys, give me a moment here. It seems to be a little problematic.
No, Martin, this guy is a cybersecurity guy. He might not be interested in sharing his entire screen. We're able to see your screen now.
See it now. Okay.
Yeah.
So now it's forcing me to share out my entire screen. So anything that I'm doing, you'll be able to see it.
Okay. It's good to go. Thank you.
Good. So here we are. As I mentioned, we'll spend some time on cybersecurity awareness. Let me take a minute to talk through the organization that I work for. Cybersecurity, Suriano is a cybersecurity services organization, a risk consulting firm. We're based right here in Nairobi, with presence, with capabilities that spread across Africa. And our key focus is help customers prepare, reduce, detect, and quantify your overall cyber risk posture. So not just the technology-based activities, but anything that within the organization would contribute to increasing the risk of the organization, and then narrowly focused around cyber. We're probably better known for the annual reports that we do. On the right-hand side of your screen, here are a number of the reports that we have published over years that have topic lines around cybersecurity, to do with data protection, which is perhaps the latest, greatest, hottest conversation, to discussions around cybersecurity skills gap, to cyber intelligence, and so on and so forth. This content is available from our website, absolutely free of charge. So at your own time, you're welcome to connect to our website, download these reports. They make for some excellent, easy reading to continue building your knowledge around it. You cannot do cybersecurity as an island, and we have certain key partnerships as listed on your left-hand side. Palladium Networks were recently acquired. They're now operating under the banner of Atos. They are a huge cybersecurity services provider throughout the globe, slowly making their inroads into Africa. We are the founding members of the Kenyan chapter of the Global HoneyNet Project. The HoneyNet Project looks to publish honeypots, which is the way security researchers are able to understand different attack vectors that attackers will launch against different organizations. As I mentioned, we are a huge research organization, and a key partnership we have is through USIU. Even through our partnership with USIU and Kenya Bank Association, we have come up with a program known as Cyber Shujaa that's focused on training and placing youths between the ages of 18 and 35 in different aspects around cybersecurity. And then finally, through AfroSci, a free organization of English-speaking audit institutions, who, of course, you would imagine find this topic to be particularly important to them. We run a 24/7 cybersecurity center. Focus of this location is to collect events from different data sources, understand the threats that have been launched against our clients, and utilize that information to be able to guide and notify them of ongoing attacks. So let's get into our conversations. So just for trending purposes, I have about 30 slides that I'm going to be stepping through. I imagine I'll be able to knock this out in about 30 to 40 minutes, or maybe a little less. That will hopefully leave us with just a few minutes to have one or two Q&A. Understanding cybersecurity goes a long way in understanding some of the trends that are happening. So we took some time as we were preparing this to look at some of the attacks that we saw occurring in 2023. Ransomware was one of the key components that we saw occurring across the organization. Ransomware is a type of a malware attack where an attacker will introduce some type of malicious software whose intent is to encrypt your critical system within your environment, your healthcare system, patient data information, if it's banks, your core banking system, and so on and so forth. And the purpose is that they recognize you have sensitive, valuable information, which they can sell online on the dark web. And as I mentioned, ransomware, in essence, looks at locking you out of your system. You show up one morning and you cannot log into your desktop if you're working off a desktop. If you're working off your laptop, you cannot connect to any of the services, email, some of the file shares where you might have files that you're working on, projects, and so on and so forth. All that is locked out through a ransom, and the only way that you can be able to access it is that they force you to pay some form of ransom, hence the name ransomware. You'll be very intrigued to note that this ransomware and this attacks by this organization has become very organized. And they actually have customer service that you can reach out to on email or phone, and they will guide you on how to get Bitcoins or some type of cryptocurrency, which is how they want to get paid. And there are a lot of interesting stories that you may have heard around ransomware. There's one organization in the US that was a victim of a ransomware attack. And because they were dilly-dallying in paying the attacker, that attacker notified their regulator that, hey, this person, we recently attacked them, and they are supposed to report to you within 24 hours that they have been attacked, and they have not done it. So they have become quite aggressive. And as you can imagine, they have particular attacks on organizations that will have any type of sensitive information. As security experts advise organizations against being cautious about paying a ransom. Look, you're dealing with criminals. You don't know whether or not they're going to keep their word. That's what they do. The easiest solution around dealing with this type of attacks is to having a very robust, very good backup that you're able to recover from it. We go on and start talking about something known as phishing. Phishing in this technology space is spelled with a PH. It is a form of social engineering And it is used to trick users into providing their login attacks. Social engineering is another term for a con. A con man will come and give you a nice story about this, that, or the other, try and sell you something that he or she doesn't own, has no control over, and you, with your interest, with you getting gullible, susceptible to it, fall for it and provide that information. Through these social engineering attacks, the attackers are able to gain access into an internal network. They're able to expand the attacks into the environment. Phishing can be sent through multiple platforms, email, SMS. Email is perhaps the most common approach around phishing is concerned. And the intent is that if you as the user click on an infected attachment, it will grant that attacker either access to your machine or very well introduce the malware, the ransomware that we were talking about earlier on. Empower Research Labs reported that ransomware attacks increased by about 38% last year. While a lot of this increase is focused, of course, on financial institutions, we have seen a continuous increase around medical and services providers, health insurance, and so on and so forth. Security experts will strongly urge you to have this type of awareness sessions that allow you to get your people to understand, to appreciate some of the dangers that can be presented by phishing attacks. Peter mentioned about the distributed denial of service attack that occurred last year that impacted different types of services. A denial of service attack, as the name suggests, results in a system being unable to provide the information that you need. When we say a distributed denial of service attack, it means that the attack is coming from multiple sources. It's not just one IP that's attacking you, but multiple of them. And the way it works is that an attacker will send more requests than your system is able to handle. Let me use the example of language. If I am speaking, you need to be actively listening to what I'm saying, and then you would respond back with a question, with a comment, with a contribution. Now imagine I've been the presenter and all of you speak at the same time. And when I last checked, we're about 40 people on this particular call. Increase that number to 100, 120, to 300. It gets to a point where I get overwhelmed. I am not able to respond to all the questions, comments, contributions that have been provided. And that's what is the denial of service. That's the way the attacker forces a system to simply get overwhelmed, resulting in the affected institution to simply go offline. As healthcare providers, you continue to digitize, you continue to depend on highly complex system, and that creates a very attractive target to a cyber criminal for the purpose of a DDoS attack, a denial of service attack. We talked about this complex chain that we are operating with, this networked environment. We have different types of suppliers who provide all types of services or products, regardless of your industry. The supply chain attacks, which we saw an increase of in 2023, is looked at targeting your third-party service provider. So you have kept your house clean. You have the proper controls, you're monitoring, you're patching, you're doing all the things that are talked about. An attacker realizes that you're connected to a certain third-party service provider who might not take security as seriously as you do. Therefore, they attack them, compromise them, and through that environment, you're able to now access into your environment, be able to gain into your environment. To fix that, a key component that we strongly urge is having what we are referring to as zero trust cybersecurity measures. In essence, you trust no one. Everyone has to authenticate. Everyone has to prove they are who they are. And this is a continuous activity. Now, it sounds a lot more complex than it actually is. But in essence, what you're doing is as you're walking into a building and you have an access badge, that access badge is what grants you access into the environment. A zero trust is of the same format. The organization knows you, but it forces you to authenticate as you're coming into the building using that access badge to get through an access control door. So we're going to spend some time talking about these different attacks as they come through. I already mentioned around social engineering, the art of convincing people to reveal confidential information, excuse me. The social engineering categories will include human-based attacks, a phone call from me pretending to be somebody else to do something else that forces you to do something, a mobile-based attack through mobile channels, social media, WhatsApp, that type of thing, or computer-based, which would be the email one that we have talked about a little bit, or perhaps you surfing, going onto a website and downloading something that you should not do. So let's spend some time on this human-based attacks. We talk about impersonation, impersonalization, a legitimate end user, somebody who pretends to be a very important user, from a technical support, an internal employee, a repairman. I just pretend to be a helpful employee and say, hey, I can assist you to log onto your system. I use that type of approach to play on your nature of trusting other humans, and based on that, able to get into your environment. Something else we refer to as reverse social engineer, which is basically some form of sabotage, send you some marketing material that gets you interested in the promotion for a trip, promotion of a good that I'm selling, a car, clothes, shoes, you name it, and using that to be able to access your environment. There is a term we refer to as phishing, which is an attacker uses voice over IP, which is used for telephone communication. That voice over IP allows us to have a phone conversation that I trick you into revealing certain critical information about yourself. An angel, something we refer to as dumpster diving. As you take out your trash and it contains your statement for your banks or some other information that's critical, I go and retrieve that from your dumpster, from your trash bin, and use that to get information about your information. Eavesdropping, basically listening to conversations that I have no business listening to. You as an end user need to be very conscious of where you are. I'm sure you've all experienced being in a restaurant, being in a lift, in an elevator, on the street, in a matatu, where somebody is talking loudly about all their business. That would be a favorite type of social engineering attack, to collect information of somebody who's sharing information that they should not, and use that to trick them further. And then shoulder surfing, looking over your shoulder while you're working on your PC, while you're working on your tablet, while you're working on your phone, and being able to see certain information. And then the last one is simply coming up to you as you're entering the building and saying, hey, I forgot my badge, help me to be able to gain access into the environment. Talk about computer-based. As I mentioned, this one is done through the help of computers. We already talked a little bit about phishing, which is email specific, sending or providing links that falsely claim to be from a legitimate site. And here I want you to think about spam mails that come in through left, right, and center on a consistent basis, and how you can click on that and it results in you getting access, in you granting access to somebody who should not be able to do it. We used to have a lot of the pop-up little apps that show on your computer while you're in the middle of doing something, in the middle of reading a newspaper article, researching on something, or minding your own business on some other article, and you find yourself with that information being used as a way to gain access into your environment. And then finally, the chat message, a way that somebody's able to gather information through communicating with you on what you're currently doing. We're going to switch over to mobile-based attacks. Going a bit faster there, so let's do this, okay? Mobile-based attacks, which is publishing of malicious apps. We're in the day and age where you have an app for pretty much everything, from finding directions to your banking, to booking a holiday, to booking a trip, all kinds of things that different type of apps we utilize them to. An attacker can look to publish a malicious app and re-engineer that, repackage that, including them with some form of a malware that results in them being able to gain access to your device. This would be similar to the same as far as security applications is concerned. There have been attacks that we have seen over years where you think you're downloading something to help you improve on the security of your device, and the attacker had already attacked that and used that to introduce something that should not be in your information. And then finally, dealing with SMS phishing. SMS used to give attack you as a user a link or a message to point you to something that looks to be very interesting, very luring, very attractive. You click on that, and the attacker gains access into your environment. So we talked about the different tactics that are utilized. Let's also spend some time talking about some of the targets that would be looked at as far as this is concerned. Common targets would be your help desk, would be receptionists, would be people in that environment, because they are common in interacting with people on a consistent basis. If you think, for example, if you work right at the front of access into your environment and you're the one who's the greeter, as an attacker, and I want to gain access to your hospital, I want to gain access to your medical center, to your bank, I approach you, very charming, very interesting stories, ask you to do something, and the next thing you know, you've granted me access into your environment. Technical support staff, very similar. They have a role, and you'd imagine that they'd be more aware about this type of attacks. But the attacks can be very well crafted, very well timed to the organization to make sure that you're able to compromise your technical support and your system administrators to be able to get in the environment. Your general end users and clients perhaps provide a very wide target market for an attacker to be able to do it, because these people might not necessarily be technical, and they're interacting with the systems looking for a specific service. That becomes a very good target to initiate that social engineering, using one of the platforms that we talked about, that able to grant access into the environment. So what does social engineering take advantage of? Just human behavior, fear. The human brain is hard-coded to keep us alive, which basically means that anything that you interact with that you don't recognize or you associate with some other item can incorrectly be translated into fear. And social engineer attackers know this. They're able to play on that nature of human, play on that fear to be able to gain access to what they did. Sad to say, we have a tendency of being greedy, to gain more than what we are entitled to. And that sense of greed is something that an attacker can be able to play on. If I can take you back to the street-old tricks of pata potea, somebody is on a table and they're showing you, you see a card here or a ball, and they're moving their hands in their flash way, making you think that if you put more money, you'll be able to win it, and they take money from it. Just as I talked about fear, we have a tendency of trust. Until that trust is violated, something that's coming across that you've interacted with that you think is actually true can be an avenue in which an attacker will be able to get through to it. And then we talk about ignorance, simply not knowing. The nature of technology is one that can really put you in a position of just feeling inadequate, not knowing how to navigate through all these advances that have come up. TVs nowadays are very connected to the internet and have all kinds of apps running on them. Your traditional user, your common non-technology user, can find that to be quite overwhelming and feel quite ignorant on the way they are being able to step around it. And then finally talk about moral obligation. As a person thinking that I need to do the right thing, I need to help, and the attacker knows this and takes advantage of it and is able to exploit it. We'll continue ahead and start talking about email security, having introduced some of the attack vectors that can be leveraged against you as an individual, can be leveraged against the organization. We use email for all sorts of things, carry out quite a number of critical functions. Let's start with a form of communication, and specifically official communication at the workplace. Send an email to your boss, send an email to your co-workers, send an email to your direct reports. This has been agreed upon as a common official communication media on which messages are being able to be passed back and forth. The use of email accounts can be able to allow you to get into a conference call and have a conversation, work collaboratively with workmates, with work groups, with all kinds of people. And this conference call more than likely will have you authenticating through some form of email. We talked about official communication. In that email, you can include attachments, include a report, an Excel document that has some form of data, a PDF, all kinds of things that are relevant to your day-to-day, either as far as your work is concerned or of interest for you. This type of communication can be utilized. We go away from the professional environment and we look at the personal usage. And you communicate with your friends through social media, you communicate through your friends and family through email, depending on where they are, quick message, good platform to be able to do it. I already talked about email as an identifier. You logging onto your browser using email, and off that, it's able to personalize search capabilities. It's able to customize your user experience on the browser, the type of sites that you like to go to, the information that you get. A lot of the online shopping forces you to create some form of an email account or provide an email account that allows them to send to you different correspondence, different promotions, and so on and so forth. We already touched on social media, which is a big way of our communication today. At the background of that, you'll find many a times creating those social media accounts is done through email. You can utilize your email accounts to integrate your calendars and appointments onto your mobile device that allows you to be on the go as the way we are living our life today. Through advertising, different players will send information about travel, promotion on an air ticket, invitation to some form of a destination. Some of these ones could very well be sent through email. And then you'll find banks potentially will include notification of money transfer through email if you're doing internet banking, and that will send that information to let somebody know, hey, these funds have been sent to you. You should expect them within the next day, within the next few hours, and so on and so forth. So the question becomes, why is it that you're attacking? What is it about you that makes these attackers look at you and see, I can gain access to this? Attackers know that there can be quite a bit of money to be made through these email hacks. This is an old alert. It goes back almost 4 or 5 years, where the FBI issued an alert notifying people that an average email attack can result in a loss anywhere between $25,000 and $75,000. In today's exchange rate of how much that translates to, this is a significant amount of money. And to imagine that email is the media through which you get hacked is quite concerning. And brings us into the next question, which is how secure is your email account? In the next few slides, I'll share with you some of the things that you need to look for as far as email attacks are concerned. But let's browse on them at a very high level. As you try to stay safe while using your email, here's some things that you can be on the lookout. Spelling mistakes, particularly in the addressing. You will find a weird message sent to you and will have 1 or 2 words misspelled, in particular in the subject line or even in the addressing. And this for you should be potentially a red flag, because this is a way that attackers will misspell words in a way to try and trick the technology that's in place to prevent that from coming through. You get an email and it has an unusual sense of urgency that you need to do this and do this within the next 2 hours, or you will not win this amount of money, or you will not receive your blessing, or some other bad thing will happen to you. This weird sense of urgency that makes you think I need to act on this right now is a quick, is one indicator that perhaps I need to look at this a bit more tightly. As I mentioned earlier on, none of the things that we'll be spending some time talking today are technical in nature. It's just things that you need to look at and be aware as you're operating continuously. Embedded in the email, the inclusion of a link that's asking for you to click on it, for you to get more information on whatever it is that it is sharing about. Be very careful of any links coming included in any email and how you click on those ones. An email message sent saying, hey, there's a compromise on your account. We need you to change your username, we need to change your password. Here's the link for you to be able to do that. That is a way for the attacker to harvest information from you. You understand generally how email works of your organization. If there's not much email flowing after hours, be very wary of a message that's coming from the support desk, that's coming from your boss, that's coming from a colleague, because that could be a well-crafted attack to make sure that you're able to sneak on, to click on something that you don't need to. And then unknown offers on products that you had no knowledge about, have never inquired, and here it is coming in through your mail asking you to do something about it, requesting you to make some form of a payment on it. Again, items that you should be very wary about. As I look at this, I realize that some of the content might not be very clear, but let me try and quickly step you through what you're looking at. At the very top of the screen, where it's the addressing information, this is supposedly an email coming from the CEO. And when you look at the mail address, the one that is in parentheses, you notice that something's off. It doesn't have your company domain. It simply says mail.com. And this is one area that you need to be careful about. Have a look at the mailbox that is supposedly not just the name, because that can be crafted, but the actual mailbox that could tell you something that's going off. Then you have the message within the email itself. It's asking for you to make a payment. And there is the sense of urgency. Can you do this today? Now, we all know how executives and senior management can be generally impatient, and you would find this to be normal, but you need to understand what is your payment cycle within your organization, if indeed you're responsible for making payments, and staying true to that, because that potentially would be an indicator that something is off. I already shared about the email address on item number 4. And then on item number 5, there, as you can see, there is a mix and match, misspelling, change as far as what is listed on those items that could impact how it is that you're handling the data. Still talking about email security, studying your mail closely, looking at small things here that could throw you off. Here's a message that seems to be saying Windows Live Hotmail. For those of you who remember the Hotmail. Hotmail is generally one word, so seeing them separate should be a quick indicator that perhaps something's off. That's kind of unclear, but then you notice within the email, the grammar, the English spelling, the wordings are completely off, or just even slightly off. Seeing that type of information is something that you need to be careful. And then, of course, now item number 3, asking you information about yourself, your name, a password, change your password, email address, date of birth, and so on and so forth, items that could appear on that that will show you something's off. We normally like to do this presentation where we have an opportunity for us to interact, but I want you to take note of this website listed here. It's HTTPS listed on your top left-hand side. HTTPS, have I been pawned? PWNED, have I been pawned.com. I want you to take your email address, go to this website. Do not worry, it's not going to hack you. It's just giving you some information. Go into this website and plug in your email address, joseph.madenge@gmail.com, and see what returns. You may find that it will give you some very interesting information about the email that you utilize, and give you information about how your email may have been involved in a data breach somewhere. What that means is that your data is sitting somewhere out there in the web, has been in a data breach of sort, and doesn't necessarily mean that you have been attacked, but it means that your email is with hands that it should not be able to be on. We already spent some time talking about the different attack methodologies. I won't spend too much time on this one. We talked about social engineering. We spent some time on email attacks. Malware, as the name suggests, is a mix of the word malicious software, hence the word malware, which will encompass viruses, Trojan horse, a backdoor, some form of a ransomware, botnet, spyware, and so on and so forth. We'll spend some time over the next few slides talking about password attacks, and then utilizing wireless. Nowadays, the first thing you ask for when you travel, go into a restaurant, go into a hotel room, is the Wi-Fi, the wireless password. Attackers know this, and they use this to be able to gain access into your environment. We have a pretty wide digital footprint, be it our email, be it our presence in social media accounts like Twitter and Facebook, be it LinkedIn that we utilize for our professional image. We have a huge digital footprint of things that we publish all over the place. You need to be acutely aware of this, because this is the information that can be crafted to target you as an individual or to target you as a way into your organization. So some of the websites listed here simply build on that information. On the very first bullet point, as far as cameras was concerned, we have CCTVs everywhere nowadays, at home, in our houses, at our offices, in our workplace. Have a look at that website. It has some interesting information that you can go in and see which sites have been compromised, which websites you're able to see the outside and build to it. I pray, dear God, that whereas you go through this, you do not find your particular camera information about you, your organization, your house, because this is where some of this information might be. You can do a search by image using that second link that we have specified there. Do a people search, and we have given two options there, one that would potentially require payment and one that is relatively free of charge. This are interested for you to simply click on and see what you can get information about yourself. I am not a big person to urge you to do such on other people, unless, of course, you have a very good reason as to why you're doing that. Be cautious. And then, of course, closing that out, talking about your footprint, where am I, who knows about me, and what do they know about me. Let's spend a little bit of time talking about password security. Password has become the common way in which we are able to keep ourselves safe, creating an item of authentication. You have your username and password. There are good passwords and bad passwords. So what type of password do you have? How good is your password? I request that you take time to have a look at this website that I'm sharing now, password.kaspersky.com, or the myonelogin.com. And what those sites do is to allow you to test your current password. And it will show you whether it's complex enough, whether you're using the right combination of letters and numbers, uppercase and lowercase, that allows you to keep yourself safe. Now, keep in mind something. Keep in mind the principle of KISS. Keep it simple. So don't have a password that's too complex. It forces you to write it down. It forces you to not remember it. So a nice, simple combination. A passphrase is much better than a password. Passphrase, the last time I was in Mombasa was December 2023, and you use the first letter of that entire passphrase as your password, mixing uppercase and lowercase, mixing numbers and letters. Passphrase of something that you can remember ensures that you're able to meet password strength requirements without making it too complex for you to remember. Here are some of the worst passwords that we have seen over the years. There was a breach that happened back in the day. This is probably more than 10 or 15 years of bad passwords that were utilized. And you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as a password used by more than 120,000 different users. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as another bad one. They use the simple word password or default. And then a lot more letters and trying to see, and that being one that can be very easily breached using what we refer to as a dictionary attack. We are required nowadays to have passwords left, right, and center. And these passwords, since they're all over the place, it becomes quite difficult to keep them all in mind. So consider the utilization of a password vault, a password management tool. And here are some examples that we have shared on the screen. Beginning with LastPass on top left-hand side is one of my favorites. I use that one quite extensively. Dashlane and Kipper, Password Boss, Sticky Password, and 1Password. There are a lot of free versus paying password tools out there that you can download onto your phone, that you can download onto your laptop, your tablet, that allows you to store them in a relatively secure place. And you just go there when you need the password to access into an environment as a way to be able to manage your way through it. It will also advise you things like password reuse. So if you're using the same password across multiple websites, it will see it kick out a message and tell you, hey, you're using this password, not a good idea. If it gets compromised, all the systems will be accessed, and there you get a chance to be able to change it out. We touched a little bit around password complexity, a mixture of characters and numbers. Use minimum of 8 characters and numbers. Utilize special characters such as the $sign, the percentage, and ampersand, and so on and so forth. Ensuring that you're using a combination of uppercase and lowercase within your password. And interesting to note that starting with a lowercase as your password actually helps. It improves the strength of the password that you're using, or passphrase, as we were talking about earlier on. Your password should be like underwear. Don't leave them out. Not everyone should be seeing your underwear. Change them regularly. And then, of course, don't share them. Simple principles around how you're using your password. No reason why any of these items would apply to your underwear. Then utilize your password, manage it in the same approach. As we continue to strengthen on how we're using password, we go into the utilization of multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is an electronic authentication method in which a user is granted access to a website or application only after successfully presenting 2 or more pieces of evidence as an authentication mechanism. The multi-factor authentication, as listed on your right-hand side, could be a combination of the items that I've listed: something you have, mobile device, something you know, which is your password, something you are, fingerprint, face recognition, iris, or your physical location. These multi-factor items are items that will ensure not just the username and password is what you're using, but you have a combination of these ones to help strengthen on what you're doing. Now, multi-factor authentication actually helps prevent quite a number of different attacks. We spent some time talking about phishing. Also on keyloggers, somebody introduces a credential stealer, which is what a keylogger is on your device. If you're utilizing a multi-factor authentication that it sends a one-time password to, say, your phone, it makes it harder for the attacker, even with the username and password, from being able to get into the environment that you're trying to protect. A credential stuffing, and then the utilization of brute force and reverse brute force attacks, as well as preventing what we refer to as man-in-the-middle attacks, sitting in and listening and then replaying that to be able to get into it. This discussion would not be complete without us touching on data concerns. So I just have 2 or 3 last slides to talk about data security. Data concerns will deal first, of course, with integrity, guarding against improper information modification or destruction, confidentiality, preserving the authorized restrictions on access and disclosure as a means of protecting personal information, and availability. All these controls and systems are completely useless if the information is not available when you need it. So the information has to be timely and reliably available for use at the time when it is needed. Finally, do understand that any of the actions and activities that you do impact your organization. You are not operating as an island. The things that you do, you yourself, has a direct bearing on how effective you are within the organization. Allow me to stop there and hand this back to you, Peter, as we wait for any questions or clarifications that there might be.
Thank you so much, Joseph, for that. That was really insightful. I know everyone, you can type in on the Q&A session section of the app. I think the one thing we got to, at one point we got to 66 attendees, which is really good. Maybe I can throw a question to you regarding healthcare, and you can advise on how best we can approach it. So one of the biggest challenges we have is we have a lot of legacy system, legacy equipment in different facilities, and you find that they are compatible. They are compatible with older OS versions. They probably will be compatible with Windows 7. And the one thing about medical equipment is that their end of life is usually longer than your normal device. So you find that we end up having a lot of legacy equipment. How do we address such gaps, considering that for healthcare businesses, they still do require the equipment for use, yet it still gives some level of exposure. Thank you for highlighting about the culture. That is also something that I think affects everyone. I think users are usually your biggest risk in an organization. So I think there are one or two questions on the question and answers, but you can start with that one, Joseph.
It's a great question, Peter. The Americans have an interesting phrase that says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Which basically means that if something is working for the purpose that it was designed for, you have no reason to replace it. Your cost of replacing it tends to be significantly high. This is especially true when you're dealing with legacy systems. Yes, indeed, sometimes the replacement of legacy systems might be driven by the cost factor. It is way too expensive to change that particular tool, that particular process. It could also be driven by the fact that it is working and working well. Basically, you need to appreciate what might be the existing vulnerabilities or weaknesses in that legacy system and see if you're able to ring fence around it. You're able to create tighter controls on who accesses that system, tighter controls on how you're able to audit, keep some form of trail of who's doing what on the system, and noting very well that the system itself might not have those capabilities. You're in essence putting things around it. It is the equivalent in essence of choosing to take a very long road trip and having with you a mechanic that's riding in the car with you, or some other form of rescue vehicle that will be able to assist you as you're going through it. So perfect world scenario, replace the legacy system with something newer that's probably going to be a lot more secure, designed to deal with those security controls. Where that's not possible, ring fence it. Create controls around it that allows you to address very narrowly the key risks of that system and how you're able to detect when somebody attempts to exploit it and tries to take advantage to gain access to the environment.
Oh, thanks for that. I think the word there is use ring fence as a strategy. I think banks also use this when for a long time ATMs were still running on XP, and they're able to still get in communication with the Microsoft to still support with different patches. So we do have Nelson. Nelson says that when trying to join using the link, it took me to my M-Pesa app. Does it mean that my email is compromised? Essentially meaning that if you click certain links and it takes you to certain apps, are those indications that you've been compromised?
Not necessarily. It could be just the link is sending you to an incorrect place. I'm glad to see that you're paying attention, that people are reacting to what they're seeing and what the system is doing. I would very strongly urge that if you find yourself onto a website, an environment that is not what you're expecting, close out of your browser, get out of it, try and log back in, but not using the same link that you normally do, using a different way. So if you have one saved within your browser as a bookmark that you just quickly click on for convenience, if that one seems to be sending you in the wrong place, find a way to fully type in and not type some of the letters and it tries to prompt you. Fully type in the link, the site that you're trying to get to see whether or not that would pinpoint to it. You do not need to be technical to recognize when you are at risk, to recognize that I may be compromised. It's so very important that your instincts, as given as an example here, that your instincts shows that you're paying attention to what else is ongoing.
Thank you for that. Before I jump to Edgar and Simon, I think Eunice has had her hand up for some time, and talking is permitted. So she's been enabled to talk. So Eunice, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that very informative presentation. So what happens when you check whether you have been pwned and you get feedback that there has been a couple of breaches on your email? How do you go about resolving that? Thank you.
Excellent question. Indeed, what is your reaction? You plug in your email address and you realize that, oops, it appears to have been on a website that was breached, on a database that was breached. One of two approaches. On the more extreme one, change your password. Beg your pardon, change your email address. Start sending your communication, your information to a different one. The one that I find to be more practical is separate between your personal general communication email that you provide to log on to Facebook, to log on to Twitter, to log on to any one of those ones, and then the password that is critical, the email that is critical that contains all your controlled information. In essence, separate those communication. So go to your bank and say, hey, I'm no longer using this email address, use this one, because now you know that the other email address potentially has been compromised. You go to any one of your other critical sources and you make that change. Keeping the one that you regularly use, but use that for social purposes. If that one gets compromised, you're not too worried about it. The other one that has critical information, create a whole new identity that allows you to still keep that communication flowing. The people that you'd have to notify for that email change would be a much smaller pool, hence making it a lot easier.
Thank you. I think Jean will take it away from here, probably follow up on the questions on Q&A and also help us with the closing. Jean?
Thank you, Peter, and thank you again, Joseph. That was a really informative session. And I'll just take two of the questions in the Q&A. So Edgar's asking if it's possible for us to have a copy of the presentation. If it's okay with you, Joseph, we can share it out to the members who've joined.
Absolutely.
Perfect. And Dr. Kingondo is asking, with regards to eTIMS, so doctors have sued KRA because of the possibility of data breaches of the health data that's held in eTIMS systems. So he wants to know if eTIMS can be breached.
Sorry, was that a question to me as to whether or not that system has been breached?
If it's a possibility that it can be breached.
Every system can be breached. There is no system under anywhere that is impossible to break into. I would not be a security practitioner worth my salt in sharing and saying that this system is 100% perfect. So the short, uninformed answer to that question is yes. But I would certainly love to get a lot more information to understand what does that system do, how is it accessed, is it published on the internet, and so on and so forth, to be able to get a more stronger position to that. But the short answer is all systems, I don't care what it is, all systems can be compromised, giving an attacker enough time, the resources to be able to do so.
Absolutely. We've seen the likes of the CIA, the NHS be breached, so it's definitely a possibility. Perhaps, Joseph, if people are worried about breaches or worried about their data, can they contact you? Is this a service that can be offered to our members if they're concerned, especially given the fact that majority of people here are handling health data, personal data? What can they do? Attending these sessions is one way, but what else can they do to further safeguard their data?
I most certainly welcome a conversation on both understanding the overall cybersecurity posture of the organization, institution that you work on, or just your own self-knowledge on that. We can be reached through our website, www.serianu. Serianu is spelled SERIANU. I'll include this information in the chat information for it to distribute. I'll also share my number as well as that of our support team that you can be able to reach out. Let's have a conversation. Cybersecurity, in the way we do this, is a very partnership-driven type of activity. I welcome a chance to get into a conversation on it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we have another question from Anthony. He says, with the evolution of telemedicine and health information exchanges, how can IT professionals in healthcare ensure secure platforms for exchanging patient data between healthcare providers? That's a really good question. So what can healthcare practitioners, IT professionals in the healthcare space do to ensure they have secure platforms? You know, we're all moving towards this interoperability. So what can we do to ensure that we are securing our platforms for safe data exchange?
Cybersecurity, like any other risk, requires a continuous engagement, one, in defining the inherent risk on those systems, and two, looking to see whether you've deployed enough controls that are effective to be able to maintain that posture. Position one would have to be, we need to get the lay of the land. We need to understand what risks are involved either in this practice, this system that we are currently doing. So finding a consultant such as Siriano to come in and do an assessment that gives you that understanding, that lay of the land, is a good starting point to build that information. Once you get that, then now you create a roadmap, a plan around how do you address those risks. Keeping in mind, like I mentioned, that these things are dynamic. They are changing year in, year out, month in, month out. So maintaining just a pace to it. You cannot buy new technology every month, obviously, but maintaining a practical pace in understanding the risk, mitigating those risks. And in mitigating those risks, having them in a list of sort, a priority list, knowing here is most critical, will impact this most critical system. I need to address this fast. And here is the way to be able to do it. Combination of technology deployment. I need to buy a new firewall. I need to buy an intrusion prevention system, intrusion detection system. Change in procedure. This system doesn't have a password. Now it needs to have a password. Access to this system is not tracked. Here's how I need to introduce it. So a nice combination between those two aspects.
Thank you so much for that. And I'll take the final one, which is in the chat from Philip. And Philip is asking, what is your reaction on shared versus personalized access control? So he's given an example of a shared email address, so reception@xxx.com, versus if it was his personal one, pn@xx.com. So what's your reaction on having shared email access versus personalized access control?
The problem with shared anything is auditability. There is no way that I can be able to attribute this information to this specific person, to be able to hold that this was targeted at this person, or this is the person who conducted that activity. Let me utilize the example of a key. Whomever has the key to the padlock of your house can gain access to it. There is no tracking of who used which key at what time. But if you were to create some sort of a pass key where somebody tags and accesses through a fingerprint, through a face recognition, you're able now to track who came in at a certain time and who left at a certain time. You obviously will not do that for your home. That's too complex and unnecessarily cumbersome. But when you think of a professional environment where you have certain critical information, that auditability, that tracking, that attributing activity to a particular person is so very important.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We've been able to cover all the questions that were asked. Allow me, Joseph, to thank you on behalf of the Digital Health Committee and the wider digital health team here at Kenya Healthcare Federation. I think it's been a great session. We'll definitely be reaching out to you. We'll send out the details. Thank you for posting them in the chat. I will make sure all the members are able to reach you, and we'll also share the slides. I've seen a couple of requests for the slides to be shared. So we will do that after the session, and a recording will also be available. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. As Peter did say, this is the first in a series of webinars that we will be doing, all in a bid to ensure that our members are informed, up to date. You know, a lot of people are becoming aware about their data, their personal data, asking a lot more questions. So it's very important as healthcare practitioners and IT professionals in this space that we are aware and we can respond appropriately. So thank you again to Joseph. Really, really great session, and have a great day, everyone, and see you soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Joseph.